All right, welcome to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9, along with Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. Mike, thanks for coming down. Great to see you as always. Mike started his website back in the 90s, right?
96.
1996, covering recruiting. And Mike, LSU just wrapping up their recruiting class, although there are still 5 spots left, right, that they can take care of.
5 spots left, and you got to think, or at least in my opinion, that number, the first position, which I think will come after spring football and after the spring semester, is a center. I think they need to find a center. I think maybe losing Danny Lewis in a high school prospect, they need to get a tight end, and then they'll go from there. You know, maybe an additional offensive lineman, maybe a quarterback after spring practice shakes out, and then maybe another couple more defensive players. Or a wide receiver, wide receiver. Obviously, they went for another wide receiver and didn't get one.
They signed Fitzgerald West. He's a center, right? But maybe not ready. Not a guy you can plug in and start as a freshman.
Not ready. And I mean, let's see how some of the guys that are going to work out there in the spring pan out. But the other part of it is there's some talk about maybe Emory Jones from Catholic High playing there to start his career, and I think he's going to be an all-SEC guard one day. I'd hate to have to see him play that position early while Fitzgerald West learns the position, because hopefully he is the guy for the future. But I think they need immediate help there right now.
So LSU's class, new LSU head coach Brian Kelly taking over. Obviously, it's been a chaotic year for LSU football. Ed Orgeron gets dismissed in mid-October, but has to coach the remainder of the year. Doesn't coach the bowl game, so some assistant coaches have to pick up that slack and try to recruit along with Coach Kelly. It was just a lot of people coming and going left and right. So for LSU to settle in at number 12 nationally, and apparently there's now rankings that factor in the transfers also, the transfer portal guys, it appears LSU's as high as number 6 in some of these rankings. Now, some people aren't as high on that number 6 ranking as others. I've heard a lot of different varying talk about how good or how not good this class is at this point. Just overall feelings.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's probably maybe a half a dozen of those transfer guys that I think can be really strong performers for LSU. I like, obviously, the Frazier on the offensive line that you got in December, Fouché, Brooks. A couple of the defensive linemen, the offensive linemen, Wingo. I mean, so and obviously when you go and get the all first team all Big 12 cornerback, that's already a grad transfer. I mean, already a graduate and going to be pre-vet. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And multiple of these guys, all have Louisiana ties, so they're coming home.
Let's just take a look at some of the. I wrote this all down. Guys, I'm a nerd. I remember a lot of stuff in my head, but a lot of the stuff is fresh. I'm going to forget names and whatever. So on the offensive line side of things, and sometimes I don't want to say we forget people, but, just because it didn't happen yesterday, it's not as exciting as when it happened back in December or whenever. But the offensive line, so Will Campbell, he's kind of the rock, or one of the rocks of this class, 6'6", 300 pounds from Neville. He's been kind of a ringleader of this recruiting class.
Yeah, and he's strong. He's going to get bigger and stronger, competitor. He wants to be the best offensive lineman in the country. And it's funny that him and Walker Howard have become best friends. And so absolute stud, and it's not many years where Louisiana has offensive linemen like him. So when the state does have them, you better get them. And to me, that was what all the issues that you had in the transition from the Orgeron era to Brian Kelly. When you keep guys like that home, that was imperative. So and so absolute stud. And then Emory Jones, of course, right here in Baton Rouge, I think he's another stud. You're talking about 6'4", 300 pounds, and
got him listed at 341. Is that right?
Yeah, over 300 pounds.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Just checking. I saw that number. It kind of jumped off the page at me.
Yeah, and he carries it well. So I know one time he was at 320, but he can move, he can pull, got a mean streak. He could play every position on the line. Maybe he could be a right tackle, but I think he's a future All-Pro guard.
I was at that state championship game. Catholic High played against Jesuit, and Catholic High held the ball the final 9 minutes of the game, burned off the final 9 minutes of the clock to get the victory there. And obviously he was a big part of that up front, just chewing up the clock.
And Catholic High is going to have arguably the #1 player in the state in Shelton Sampson for next year. And I'm kind of thinking about putting him there. I know a lot of people have Arch Manning early. I don't think so. I think it could be Shelton Sampson or Derek Williams at Westgate, New Iberia. Holstein at Zachary, who's committed to A&M, is right in the talk. I think a lot of national guys putting Arch Manning there early, that's a mistake.
Well, certainly Arch Manning's name and the legacy and just the sizzle and the way he moves the needle obviously has to play a big factor in. Not his fault, it's just who he was born to be.
Look, and I always tell people that Arch Manning didn't declare himself the #1 quarterback in the country or a 5-star. There's people out there like myself and others who do that stuff. He didn't declare himself that. So, but I think they jumped the gun because I think Holstein at Zachary is better than him, and there's a whole lot of people who might say Ricky Collins at Woodlawn is better than him. Mm-hmm. So we'll see who's committed to Purdue.
Saw Ricky Collins this past week in Rohan Davies' 7-on-7 league. He's out there. It's kind of like the Manning Passing Academy, where you go to the Manning Passing Academy, you see some big-time quarterbacks who are kind of counselors. That's what they're doing at the 7-on-7, except you've got Ricky Collins, Daniel Beal, the quarterback at Catholic High. He's out there helping out and stuff. So that's a cool thing.
And then Jordan Matthews, Rashawn Matthews' son, is a corner at Woodlawn that everybody in the country is going to want. 2023 is absolutely stacked in the state, just like 22.
So is this the best back-to-back years in the state in a little while?
It could be. I think maybe 22 was a little bit more top-heavy, where you would say that you had the highest number of national 100 caliber guys. 22 had that. But I think depth-wise, 23 might be better as far as the number of guys that – I think the number of guys that will get LSU offers in 23 could be more than the class of 22. But 22 had a lot of mega guys in them, just top-heavy national guys that you would argue for 5-star status.
Bo Bordelon, I've seen him as low as a 3-star, but it looks like he has got some 4-star rankings. Obviously, his dad was offensive lineman at LSU. He looks a little light, 265 listed from Newman. But he's in the class, and we've already talked about Fitzgerald West. So those are your 4 offensive linemen from out of high school at least. Will Campbell, Emory Jones, Bo Bordelon, Fitzgerald West. And then the transfers, Tremont Shorts from East Tennessee State, 6'4", 326 pounds, and then Miles Frazier, 6'5", 305 from Florida International. So right there, 6 offensive linemen joining the team.
I think that, and I've been saying it for a while now, I think that position is the one that's going to come along a lot quicker than people think. And Bo Bordelon's actually 295 now.
Okay.
I saw him several times this season. When I saw him in Ponchatoula at the Jamboree, he had already put on. He was in the 290s.
Okay.
He is just eating like I told, of course, his dad's Ben. I said, Ben, I wouldn't want to know your grocery bill, because then he's got a younger brother, Brett, who could be the best of all of them, who was a 9th grader starting on that Newman offensive line at right tackle, and who's got an offer from LSU now. Brett's already at 260 probably.
Okay, this is a
9th grade.
Real dated number then here off the.
But he put on. It's kind of dated, but it's not, because the amount of weight he's put on in a short period of time. It's an easy era.
Gotcha. All right, so that we talked about the offensive lineman there. The quarterback situation for LSU next year, I think everyone's really pulling for Miles Brennan to finally start to finish, put up numbers, lead the team to victories. Walker Howard, if this was an NFL team, you'd say that Miles Brennan is the aging veteran and Walker Howard is the hotshot rookie that is going to mentor or be mentored by him.
Yeah, Walker. Obviously broke his leg in late September, came back in time for the playoffs, played that last regular season game, and then re-injured it. So let's see. I know there's some other little things that he needs to get right before spring practice. So we're going to see.
He's already enrolled. He's on campus going to class.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but Walker's going to has a big time, bright future. But we're going to have an early spring practice. I think LSU spring practice is going to start because you look when Easter falls. I don't know the exact date, but you're going to have an early spring practice. So
I think it's April 17th, Easter. I've looked at.
Yeah. So they're probably going to want to start LSU spring practice mid-March, so that they get it in before Easter break, because they usually don't like to have a. So I think LSU will probably have one of the earliest spring games on the SEC network when they release that schedule. That's my thought.
Okay, and it'll be real interesting to see how much media access we get to go out to practice and to see these guys and to shoot video. I mean, for the last 20 years, basically, they let us go out and watch 15 minutes of practice. And I say practice, it's not really practice. It's warming up, it's quarterbacks throwing to unguarded receivers, it's defensive linemen hitting sleds, offensive linemen hitting sleds, that type of deal. I remember Orgeron, 2016, when he was the interim head coach. He let us come out to practice in the middle of the week, and I think we stayed like 30 minutes the week of the Alabama week. That was just like unheard of.
Well,
Miles would throw us out like in August.
I've been keeping in regular dialogue with the guys at Irish Sports Daily that covered him at Notre Dame for years. And so there's going to be a lot of, I don't want to say pressure on Michael Bonnet and Sports Information, but there was a lot of access that Brian Kelly gave. Like, I know they got coordinators in the spring. They got coordinators twice a year, after spring or during spring practices. And I want to say the 15 to 20 minute period deal that we've been getting for years, ever since Saban, I want to say he has given more access than that to practice. So how much does LSU adopt that? I was even told that they would get full practices. So,
wow.
Of course, then you can turn that around and say how many guys in the media want to actually attend a full practice.
Well, that's
but when of course, right now we've gone 2 months without Brian Kelly. So when are we going to get him?
That is a talking point, folks. I mean. I'm not going to complain about it or whatever. I'm just telling you.
I will.
Well, if another week or so goes by and we don't hear from him, then I think somebody's going to have to speak up. But he was hired December the 1st. You and I are sitting here. It's February the 3rd. He has not done a press conference with the media in 2 months, which I said, okay, look, he's got to hire his staff. He's got to get his roster in place. I think for the most part, those two things are now complete. So now is he ready to kind of talk and move forward and answer some questions?
Well, yeah, because now, the Chiefs got eliminated, so his DC's in place, like you said, and the whole staff's locked in. You've got 2 signing periods in. And so I think we probably need to, I hope this doesn't get extended to where we don't get him until he's given us a press conference because they're about to start spring practice. Hopefully we get him in the next week or so. And I think that I've kind of heard we might get him next week. And then I assume probably after that we wouldn't get him again until the day before spring football practice starts.
Which is fine. So the second signing day that took place, LSU went into the day with their eyes on 6 guys, basically. Some people brought up a parallel to I think it was the day after LSU played in the Outback Bowl in 2013. There was the Under Armour game. LSU got Leonard Fournette and Jamal Adams that day, and they missed out on the other ones.
Oh yeah, and all of us guys that cover recruiting took a thorough beating on social media because all of us said 5 for 5, and they didn't get them. But then when you look back on the ones they did get that day, they were all the good ones. Mm-hmm. You got Jamal Adams, Leonard Fournette, and the ones you lost.
Speedy Snow.
All had issues on and off the field. Gerald Willis.
Oh man, I remember that. Yeah, there was the family. Literally, there was people that took a swing at each other because there was different family dynamics on stage.
Yeah, that's Landon Collins' brother, and then and then Hootie Jones.
Yeah.
And of course, LSU got Jamal Adams, which
pretty good player.
One of the, if not the, arguably the best safety in LSU history.
So signing day yesterday, it starts out, okay, Jalen Davis Robinson, 3-star cornerback. He signs with LSU. Somebody told me they're wondering at this point if people are just out of ideas when it comes to how long can I toy with people's emotions before So he has got an Oregon T-shirt on, and then he takes it off. He's got an LSU shirt underneath. Running back Trevante Citizen, he was from the Lake Charles area there. He had committed to LSU back in the summer, right?
And when he committed to LSU, leading up to that, I thought LSU was way on the outside looking in, and then he up and committed to LSU. And if you remember, that was right when the COVID stuff, they opened things up and kids could finally get on campus and see campuses and visit with coaches in person, because they hadn't been able to the whole year before. And LSU was way behind. And when he committed to LSU, I was actually shocked. So that I don't know what's going to look. Lake Charles Prep's going to continue to have a lot of players for years to come. I don't know if there's a situation there that needs to get fixed. But I thought Tuesday night it was going to be Florida for Citizen, and then yesterday morning I said, look out for Miami, and sure enough, it ended up being Miami.
And so LSU's running back situation right now, because Tyron Davis-Price, after going over 1,000 yards, although the running game last year was really hit and miss. I mean, he ran for almost 300 yards in one game against Florida. But, I mean, how do we feel about that right now? Because Corey Kiner shows some ability. Armani Goodwin shows some ability, although he was hurt, right? And so John Emery is a huge wild card in all this. You and I were talking about that the other day. If John Emery can finally get everything lined up, get his act together, and get on the field and stay on the field, he could have kind of like Miles Brennan.
But John Emery could actually, you always want to look at the silver lining, but this could actually be a real big thing for Emery. He got to sit out, rehab, refocus. I don't know what his mindset's like. He gets a new running backs coach, a new head coach, a new attack with the offensive line, a bunch of new faces on that offensive line. Now you get Noah Kane coming in as well. So that's why I don't think, we're going to see on Citizen, but I think he's got a real opportunity. And if he's looking at it the right way, he could have one of the best comeback years of anybody. And I think that's the hope. But losing Citizen, I don't think that was is big of a deal, because I think look, when you list off all those running backs, Goodwin, Kiner, Emery, Noah Kane, and you still got others. So. Mm-hmm. Then next year, the state of Louisiana, you've got Caleb Jackson at Liberty. Of course, now we're going to be waiting to see who the new head coach at Liberty is going to be, now that Dre Trosclair has gone to Plaquemine after he took Central Lafourche for a week. But now...
And that was a whiplash situation with Coach Trosclair there.
Yeah, and so then you got Trey Holly at Union Parish. And I think those two, Trey Holly's the little guy that gets lost, and he's fun to watch. So I think, and then you got the power back Caleb at Liberty. I think those two complement each other. So, there's a real scenario where Frank Wilson has it easy. He just signs those two next year, and he's gold.
Now, Danny Lewis, the tight end at Westgate in the New Iberia area, I think this is more of a public relations hit, perhaps, than the talent on the field. So, for those of you who don't know, as Will Wade would say, you've been living under a rock. There was a viral video of Danny Lewis and Coach Kelly, kind of like a carbon copy of the Brian Kelly Walker Howard video that came out where they're dancing and whatnot, and so people see that and see the kids from Louisiana and figure, and as people are making fun of, some people are making fun of people who don't root for LSU, I should say, making fun of Coach Kelly, then LSU fans are saying, yeah, well, he's getting the recruits, so shut up. And
yeah, he's got a few nicknames out there that I'm not going to say, but I'm, I don't know if he hopes, I'm sure he hopes that dies, but don't be shocked, folks, if you see a few choice signs on ESPN Game Day or when LSU goes on the road next season.
So that it was close to 9 million views. So Danny Lewis yesterday chooses Alabama instead. And then I saw an interview with him afterwards, and he described it as a no-brainer, he said, to go to Alabama to play for the greatest coach of all time, as he put it. So, but I will say this, Harold Perkins, the 5-star linebacker who later committed to LSU that day, I read an interview with him, and he said, when I first saw Coach Kelly, I thought he was dry and uptight. But then I saw him interacting and dancing and doing some things, and Harold Perkins liked that. And so, although it was maybe a black eye with the Danny Lewis thing, maybe it helped you get Perkins.
Well, in the Danny Lewis thing, I mean, even Rich Eisen put out, I'm a YouTube junkie, and so I'm subscribed to Eisen, Dan Patrick, all the national guys. He even put out his own separate video uploaded, and the title was, "You mean to tell me Brian Kelly lost that guy?" That he was, and that was, he put that out. So that kept it going. So, look, Danny Lewis was the MVP of the 4A championship game. Westgate won a state title, and really, really fantastic football player. But I don't think there's anything going on at Westgate, but Derek Williams, who's the defensive safety there, and he's got his built kid. He's one of the best players in the state in that talk of upper echelon kids next year, and so they cannot lose him. That kid, that's another kid who was at Alabama last weekend for an unofficial visit. So, okay. But now we see Pete Golding's in jail this morning, who's the one who was getting all these guys for Alabama from Louisiana. He got a DUI last night, so maybe he was celebrating a little too hard.
Well, in Star Wars terms, the Empire has made bases in Tangible Hope Parish, right, up I-55 in that Kentwood, Amite area there, and they've also built another little base in northeast Louisiana at times, right? Getting some of the talent out there, Cam Robinson and whatnot. So we don't need another one in New Iberia, right?
No, and that was my deal. I predicted Danny Lewis to LSU yesterday. In my War Room Tuesday night, I said, it was a little over 50. I was right at 50-50, but I went ahead and gave the nod to LSU because I had a hard time believing a New Iberia kid, particularly with Keishon Butte here, was gonna leave. And by the way, if the NIL figure is correct, that I heard that it took to get him to Alabama is the right amount, then that's really sad. So
on Danny Lewis,
yeah.
Meaning it's low.
It's low.
Meaning somebody could have stepped in and
yes.
got him over here for a low number. Harold Perkins, at least on paper, there's a little bit of Devin White going on with him and the fact that he was a star running back and a star linebacker.
Yeah, I talked to Ryan Broniger and Jason Howell, the guys who cover recruiting for TexAgs.com, and Ryan probably filmed Harold Perkins almost every week during the football season because it's almost in his backyard right there. And he thinks, in his opinion, he thought regardless of where Perkins signed, that it might take some time to learn the position. But when you watch his tape, either at running back, the things he does ball skills wise, his ball skills and his knack for coming up with balls and stripping them and taking them the other way, it reminds you of Honey Badger. I mean, but as a linebacker, I mean,
yeah,
the kid's gifted. I mean, you could do multiple things with him.
Awesome. And then Jacoby Matthews, that was the late signing. That was the 6 o'clock at night from Ponchatoula safety. I had gone to a signing at U-High earlier in the day with some LSU people around there. They were saying, doesn't look good, Texas A&M, money, money, money was what they were saying. We'll see what happens. There was some talk that maybe LSU was back in the game, countering with all the stuff that has gone on for years, but now we talk about, right? I mean, there's probably... Look, we know what college football is, okay? We look the other way, but as Pat Dye once said, no program is lily white, as he said. So, but things that were under the table are now above the table, although Jimbo, I think, took offense to that, or Nick Saban took offense to that also. Nick Saban said, we never paid players.
I've got stories that I could tell about guys that Jimbo got out of South Florida to LSU. I mean, you can do Dwayne Bowe, Ricky Jean Francois, and how they got here. I mean, that's been going on for years, and he learned from the master. So he is right that it's all above the board, but for him to suggest that it's all because his staff just worked that much harder than every other coaching staff, or that that somehow his staff has the best personality guys is a slap in the face. And he just went on and on yesterday, which what it shows to me is, I don't know why he just didn't embrace it. Say, yeah, look, man, we got our act together and we handled it better than everybody else. But if you're gonna act like your program is all of a sudden the sexiest program in college football right now, and that's why you got a half a dozen or 7 5-stars in your class, nobody's buying it. What you've got under your belt right now that's notable is an Orange Bowl win after a COVID season. Other than that, you've actually underachieved.
At A&M.
You lost to a LSU team last season that was decimated. The talent that was in that starting lineup for LSU in that last game, and they beat you.
You let LSU go 85 yards in the final seconds.
And of course they'll say, "Oh, well, they lost their quarterback." Well, who was LSU playing with?
Yeah, well, like you said, LSU was decimated. And look, Jimbo Fisher, awesome resume. What he did at LSU as an offensive coordinator, 2003 national champion, and coached some quarterbacks that were drafted high. And no matter what you say about Jamarcus Russell, he was the #1 pick in the NFL draft, and then went to Florida State and won a national title and made another playoff there. But I have heard he's very difficult to work with, that coaches who have worked with him, some just don't like him at all. He lost who did he lose in this? He lost some predominant coaches in this offseason. They left. I think maybe the defensive coordinator might have left him or something like that. I'm ad-libbing off the top of my head. But anyway.
Well, he lost Josh Henson, too, who was at LSU for a period of time.
Right. So Jacoby Matthews chooses A&M and
NIL.
NIL is involved, and Jimbo has a very fiery press conference where he says he's ticked off and this and that, and says, and almost kind of like, "Oh yeah, well, you're going to push me? Well, I know stories of, in layman's terms, bags of money getting dropped off, or things getting, dug in the ground and dug up or whatever."
In the website, and maybe I'm, of course, I'm a guy that, I didn't know what Pardon My Take was till 2 or 3 years ago, but, now I love those guys. But it's like, what was it, Bro Bible? What was this website he was referring? I had to go look it up.
Sliced Bread was the poster.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Jimbo. Now I got another stop every day to go read that website.
Well, I saw an LSU player one time wearing a shirt saying "not a drug guy," and I'm thinking it's like a dare thing or something, that we grew up on. Like, this guy's saying he doesn't use drugs or whatever. Not that he did, but then I was informed that has a whole nother meaning, and whatever. I looked stupid on that one, Mike. But anyway, okay, some other, as Mike Scarborough here is with us, some other transfers that came into LSU. Cornerback Greg Brooks from Arkansas, Joe Fouché.
Yeah, so LSU loses.
From Arkansas, too.
Yep, LSU loses those two, and then, then they get LSU's defensive back. So, it's what's going on with these. It's almost like a trade. We're in free agency now. So
LSU's DBs at one point. Now you and I were talking when spring football rolls around. How many cornerbacks is LSU going to have? Or defensive backs? It's going to be low numbers.
What's the total now? You had a J.O. David Robinson yesterday, so. I mean, they're replenished. There's going to be a whole lot of new faces on a new roster to learn.
You talked about Noah Cain, the running back with Louisiana connections. He had been at Penn State. He had some injuries, but LSU is hoping that he can be a productive guy here. And Mekhi Wingo, he was a defensive lineman at Missouri, and I think was a starter and might have been like a freshman of the year or something.
Yep.
So certainly that's a nice pickup as well. They're filling the roster. When I was driving back from the Texas Bowl, I was having a conversation with a guy who's pretty well connected over there, and he's saying, "Jacques, I mean, are we going to be able to get to 62 scholarships next year or something like that when you can have a total of 85?" So I don't know. I don't know what number they're going to reach.
What have we been talking about for the last few weeks? Something's got to be done. The NCAA's got to have a convention, or they're going to have to get this transfer portal and put in some rules in place, and make it so that there's these defined periods to when you can go in the portal and when you have to declare this or that. And something I didn't realize till someone tweeted out the other day. I didn't realize that that there was a deadline for you to go within the SEC. That the SEC had their own rule. That now it's too late. If you try to enter a portal now, from one SEC to the school to the other, you can't play next season.
Okay.
So, but I think that needs to be probably nationwide and a lot more. So, they're just. But I do think, you've got this year the 25 plus 7. Are they going to give another 25 plus number next season? Are we going to get to the point where they say, it's no longer an 85 roster, we're going to go to 90? you know. And so as you start adding that, what does this do to the mid-major programs? Because that's where they're going to get hurt bad. You know, you can, you know, and I've joked with some of my Raging Cajun buddies. I'm like, you know, I can imagine y'all sitting in the stands saying, boy, that so-and-so is really, really good. And then your next thought is, well, then we're going to lose him. You know, that kid's going to hit the portal because he's made a name for himself here, and he's going to be first team all Sun Belt, whatever, and he's going to, you know, go jump and get to an SEC school.
I don't like him. It's too bad.
It's not fair. You know, it's not fair.
Yeah, and you know, creating monsters too. There's, on one hand, you say, okay, you want these youngsters to maximize their opportunities and get what's theirs and whatnot, but you don't want to create like spoiled brats too, arrogant spoiled brats. And can you imagine like a 17-year-old, you know, taking a bunch of, or driving the price up, taking a bunch of money from you, and then laughing at you when he transfers to another school because he doesn't like it where he's at? I mean, those are the kind of things. Well, look,
I've already fought it for years, where I would run into recruits and. As a 9th and 10th grader, they were, you know, Mr. Mike, you're happy-go-lucky, couldn't believe it when they got their profile in our recruiting database, and then they get their first ranking of stars. What do I need to do to become higher ranked, to be a higher 4-star? And then by the time they get to their senior year, they don't want to even talk to you because they're nearing the rankings, and they realize then they're not going to be a 5-star. And so now we're seeing there's a service out there now who's putting another tab on a profile where they're going to put a dollar figure ranking on a player, where they're going to estimate their value in dollars. And to me, that's gone. You've gone to a whole new level of. So then you also turn around, well, as a media person, and if it would talk radio host, whatever you do, where you've handled in the way you discuss college players. You've handled them and discussed them in a different way than you would a Saints player. Well, now these kids are pros. I mean, I'm seeing in a couple of weeks you got a signing autograph deal in Bossier. Will Campbell and Walker Howard are going to be up there doing that, and that's happening all over. You know, do you still talk about those kids in the same light because they are professional football players now? There's absolutely, there's just no, you can call anything you want, but they're pros.
Well, just me speaking here, I was drawn to LSU football for things like Tommy Hodson threw Eddie Fuller a pass on a 4th and 10, the stadium exploded, LSU won. Those are the kind of things that make fans fall in love with LSU football. All this other stuff going on right now, I don't think fans are interested in. They don't want to eat. They don't want to eat this up at the table.
And I do think, look, they had the NIL deal last night where they're courting businesses and saying we got to do this. And what I'm finding amazing is not. I don't think it's a generational thing. Because there's just as many 20-somethings and 30-somethings that have gotten turned off to college football is the boomers or whatever you want to call them. Hey, boomer. No, you know, yeah. I talked to several people who went to that thing last night and left there and were kind of disillusioned. I'll say that.
Yeah.
You know, so other people say they're all in. But I think they've got a tough hill to call to, and then, you know, as we talked about the other day, you know, what does this do to the TAF's abilities? You've got a finite dollar amount, a pie here of guys who can afford such things, and their business can afford such things. When they're saying, well, I'm already allocating this much money towards my passion of LSU football through my business, you know. My pie is not going to get any bigger, but I'm going to carve this section out that I would normally give to the TAF, and now that's going to NIL. So all of a sudden the TAF, you know, people are talking about when we're going to get a new PMAC. When is Bernie Moore going to get moved out towards the
the levee?
Yeah, and then make the green area where the current PMAC is, and a new auditorium. Well, how do you build all that stuff if all of a sudden the coffers of the TAF is getting less and less?
Yeah.
But then we hear that the NCAA just put out their report, and they're $1.2 billion.
Industry. And I've heard that someone who's involved in NIL and whatnot has actually heard complaints from TAF. Hey, stop doing all that. Give us some of that money. You know, money's the root of all evil and fights and whatnot, and everyone wants that dollar. And like I told you, I mean, sometimes when LSU loses a game and doesn't play well, people from the outside can say, look at those fans, the way they're acting. They are just being belligerent, or it's just a game or whatnot. But this is kind of influencing all that too. If all these people are investing all this money into it, then really, you know, they're not kids anymore, right?
No,
they're facing the same expectations as professionals.
And no, the money, the dollars. I think it's no different than somebody who's been a member of Mardi Gras crews for years, and he's spending all the money for beads and riding the float and the balls and the tuxedos and, you know. And so I was always out. The analogy I use for someone who's paying the TAF dues, the parking spot, trying to get as many TF points, the rights to buy season tickets, and then it starts to add up. So after a while, you know, at some point, as you see all this stuff, to me, the worry then becomes, are you making those fans the satisfaction that they get? You know, that's an old economics deal they call the satisfaction index. Are they getting the same amount of satisfaction that they were getting before now? And to me, that's going to be a problem. You got to keep those. If you're Scott Woodward and those guys, are you keeping those guys motivated? And are they still getting the pleasure out of, if you want to call it a hobby, or their interest? If that starts to wane, you're going to have big problems.
Well, I'm not breaking any news here, but just look at the money that's been spent, say like in the last, 6 years or so, between paying off Les Miles to go away and the Cam Camerons of the world and those guys, paying off Ed Orgeron all that money in his buyout and the coaching staff from last year and whatnot, and now coming up with a contract to pay Brian Kelly $10 million a year, and pretty much his contract is guaranteed unless he just quits or something, right? Unless he walks away. All that money is guaranteed. It's just an obscene amount of money being invested across the board in this stuff right now, and certainly the days of calling it amateurism and the kids play for the love of the game, and I like college football better than professional football because the pros get paid money and those guys are doing it for the money. I mean, you know,
yeah.
we that's long ago been gone.
It's and I don't know how you get that back. I think at some point maybe the dust settles on this in the free-for-all nature of it, or we've all been calling it the Wild Wild West. I'm even hold that term was floating around that NIL deal last night in all corners of the room. But hopefully at some point this all settles down, you know. And I kind of think, you know, is this maybe like a pyramid deal where the kids who are in there on the first year, in the first few years, they reap the biggest rewards because it is kind of a free for all and it's a new thing, but then it dies down, and then maybe your business people in it. And then I'm not just saying Louisiana, whether it's in Texas or California, wherever, where they start to say, well, you know, I'm not getting this. I mean, heck, I'm already hearing it, where, you know, people are upset because this one guy's doing the NIL stuff and he's blowing it up and he's getting all the notoriety. Well, look, man, if your business is doing the NIL deal with the player, then that's on you to not. Then make sure that guy representing your company and you're giving him money out of your business, he's up on a billboard, or you're cutting commercials with him. You know, it's up to you to use it and get the most bang for your. I mean, because that's what it is. It's that you're hiring a spokesperson or a representative of your business, and so it's up to you to maximize your advertising dollar.
I heard from an LSU parent the other day whose son was on the LSU team last year in 2021 express a complaint pretty much that the transfers that had come in, Gordon McKernan took in 3 transfers and signed them to NIL deals. And this parent was saying, well, why are the transfers getting those NIL deals? What about the kids who were on the team last year? Why don't they get the NIL?
Right.
Those are the kind of things, you know.
Right, well, because those are the ones you got to get now.
Yeah. Re-recruit your roster and all that.
Yeah. So, and hopefully, you know, the people who are putting together and doing the NIL stuff for LSU, they address that, but that's something we've talked about from day one. your quarterbacks are going to, get crazy money, and your deep snapper is going to be, maybe he's getting a combo meal at the drive-through. I mean, how's that going to play out?
Yeah, it used to be, kind of like the movie Rudy, right? Rudy just killed himself and went through hell just because he wanted to run out of that tunnel. And that's, I thought, at least, the way a lot of people in Louisiana thought about LSU football. I would do anything to run out of that tunnel. And now it almost feels like it's the kid who's got the gun to the LSU's head saying, I'm doing you a favor by playing here. And so I personally, just me, one guy's opinion, I don't like that. So I would like to see guys.
No, that's the way it is. Your opinion is the majority opinion.
Yeah. I mean, how many people would have said, man, if I could run out of Tiger Stadium tunnel on one Saturday night and played against Florida or Alabama or Auburn or one of those schools.
And there are kids that are like you're discussing.
Yeah.
But the money, the money and the situation, and then believe it or not, or it ain't hard to believe, the adults and handlers around them, and 7-on-7, all that stuff, that all corrupts everything. So, but heck, I mean, it ain't hard. Just think about what you would do at 17 years old, and you're being offered all this. And you're from a small town in Vermilion Parish.
Yeah, well, if Tommy Hodson played today, or Kevin Falk played today, or who knows, I don't know, Kevin Mawai or Andrew Whitworth or whoever it might be.
Yeah, back in those days, they would be handed a Domino's pizza when they walked out the locker room after a game. Right. And Hodson's Pizza, or guys like him, when they pull up a slice, there'd be an envelope underneath the slice.
Yeah, well, I've heard, after the game,
but what was there, a $100 bill? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands now.
Yeah. And boy, we were talking a long time. You're about to wrap up. But like in 2019, for example, that great team, that amazing team, if NIL was around, does that eat away at the team in some capacity? Does that cause some problems in some way and they slip up and lose a game along the way? I'm sure people listening would say, no, they were too good. That would have never happened. But it just makes you think, the concept of team, the concept of we're all in this together and we're all trying to win a game together and celebrate together and all of that. I hope that's still there, but it feels like there's a lot of challenges in a selfie, Instagram, me world.
Exactly.
Here we are, two boomers, two old guys just complaining about.
I'm X. I barely made X, and I'm not a boomer. I just came in under the gun.
Yeah, we're not quite that old.
My mom's a boomer.
But certainly, we were teenagers when the halftime show that for the Super Bowl, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and all that.
I'm always busting on my guys for being millennials and their, all their stuff. But now I'm funny watching the millennials bust on the Z's. And I'm like, boy, you've really gone far when the millennials can now bust on somebody.
Well, real quick example, and sorry for the nerdy reference, but Preston Guy, great guy who does stuff for you and whatnot, has sometimes ranked his top Star Wars movies.
And he's got Phantom Menace in there.
Above, what's the best Star Wars movie of all time? Can we kind of all agree? I mean, if you did a poll, Empire Strikes Back would be the one, and he had it below some of the prequels, if I remember correctly, or something like that. It's got Attack of the Clones or something above Empire Strikes Back, but that's like Van Hagar and Van Halen, right? The Van Halen fans, how could you ever say that Sammy was better than Dave? Are you kidding? But, generational thing sometimes. Mike Scarborough, thanks for coming down, man.
Enjoyed it.
We'll chat later. And as far as LSU football goes, hopefully we'll have a press conference soon with Brian Kelly, and then we'll go into spring ball and hopefully have some more great stuff for you here. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. Be sure to like and share this content. Help us grow this YouTube channel and help us grow our WFB product. Appreciate you.